And you talking about, oh, we got to find a way to free up Caitlin Clark. So your idea of freeing up Caitlin Clark is taking her off ball and running her
The final
around.
buzzer drops. The game is done. And what unfolds in the 15 seconds that follow will be the defining image of this entire WNBA season. Not a highlight reel play, not a championship moment. 15 seconds. That is all it takes. And inside those 15 seconds, everything the Indiana Fever and the broader league have been quietly avoiding became impossible to look away from. Stephanie White moved toward her players the moment time expired, arms open, expecting the kind of post-game exchange that every coach in professional sports receives, win or lose. A handshake, a nod, some acknowledgement that the game is over and the team walks off together. It is one of the most fundamental, consistent rituals in professional sports. It happens after every game, regardless of the scoreboard, regardless of how anyone feels about the result. Caitlin Clark walked right past her.
I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy.
No eye contact. No hand extended. Not even a glance in White's direction. And then Kelsey Mitchell followed, seconds later, with the exact same result. Coach standing there, players moving away. The entire exchange captured live, from multiple angles, broadcast to every platform simultaneously. This was not an accident. This was not two athletes distracted by the emotions of a tough loss. This was a deliberate, visible, and permanent signal sent by the two most commercially important players on the most commercially important team in the history of women's professional basketball. And if you want to understand what it actually meant, you need to stop looking at the 15 seconds and start examining everything that built toward them. If you want to stay ahead of every development in this story as it unfolds, make sure you are subscribed right now. We are tracking every piece of this in real time, and you do not want to be catching up after the fact when the next move drops. Because what those cameras captured is the visible surface of something that has been building inside the Indiana Fever for weeks. The snub was the symptom. The conditions that produced it go far deeper, and they have been documented, discussed behind closed doors, and felt by the players long before any camera turned toward them. Let us walk through exactly what happened and why the specific details matter more than casual coverage has been willing to admit. The Fever had just taken another loss, the kind of loss that does not exist in isolation. It lands on top of previous losses, on top of locker room conversations that have not been resolved, on top of a pattern of post-game communication that sources close to the situation have consistently described as flowing in one direction. White moved toward her players at the buzzer. This is not a controversial act. Every professional coach does this. It is one of the clearest expressions of the idea that the team remains a unit, regardless of what just happened on the court. Clark walked past without acknowledgement. Mitchell did the same 4 seconds later. These were not simultaneous, uncoordinated reactions from two frustrated athletes. These were two separate individuals, a first-year player and a seasoned veteran, making identical decisions within seconds of each other in front of live cameras, with the full understanding that every one of those cameras was rolling. Neither of them hesitated. Neither of them wavered. They walked past, and the image of Stephanie White standing alone in front of her own crowd was immediately circulating across every platform. The reaction was not gradual. It did not build slowly over hours of careful analysis. It was instant and enormous and strikingly unified in a way that conversations about the WNBA very rarely are. Because what people were watching was not just a post-game snub. They were watching a window open, briefly and completely, into something that had been sealed behind the professional courtesies of locker room culture. And what they saw through that window was the evidence of a relationship between coach and players that has deteriorated to a point where even the most basic professional courtesy was no longer something either player was willing to perform. Here is what mainstream sports coverage has been consistently unwilling to say clearly, and it matters enormously for understanding this moment. Elite professional athletes at the very top of their craft do not make public statements like this carelessly. They understand the optics. They understand how footage travels. They understand that walking past a coach's post-game handshake on a live national broadcast is not an act that gets forgotten or easily explained away. When a player at Caitlin Clark's level makes that choice, it is because the accumulated weight of whatever has been building internally has finally reached the point where the private cost of maintaining the public facade exceeded the public cost of dropping it entirely. This did not come from one bad game. This came from a pattern. A specific, observable, documented pattern that has been developing inside the Fever organization over a stretch of results that nobody connected to this team wanted to be publicly explaining. Sources who have described the internal environment at the Indiana Fever have been consistent in their framing. Clark, whose practice intensity and competitive commitment her own coaching staff has acknowledged publicly as extraordinary, has reportedly arrived at a specific breaking point. And here is the distinction that almost every outlet covering this story has missed. It is not a breaking point with losing. Winning programs are built through losses. Any serious competitor understands that. The breaking point, according to those same sources, is with a pattern of post-game narrative framing that consistently position player execution as the primary explanation for losses, while leaving the strategic and structural contributions to those losses largely unaddressed. In professional sports, this distinction is everything. Rosters can survive losing streaks. They cannot survive the perception, particularly among their own most important players, that accountability is being distributed unevenly inside the building. When the most visible player on the team becomes the most available explanation for the team's failures without the coaching infrastructure equally owning its share of the equation, something fractures. And what fractured inside the Indiana Fever became visible 15 seconds after the final buzzer. Now we need to address the economic reality underneath all of this, because without that context, the full weight of what just happened on that court does not register properly. Before Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana, the WNBA was an organization with a long record of financial losses, sustained by NBA support, playing in venues that were nowhere near capacity, relevant to a devoted but comparatively small audience. The casual viewer who drives merchandise revenue and broadcast rights negotiations was essentially absent from the picture. Clark changed that in a single season. Ticket prices across the league climbed by more than 200%. Television ratings shattered records that had stood for years, outperforming NBA and NHL broadcasts on specific broadcast nights. Her jersey became the highest-selling draft pick jersey in the documented history of professional sports across every league, every sport, every gender. That is not a WNBA statistic. That is a record in the full history of the commercial sports industry. That is who just walked past her head coach on a live broadcast without looking at her. And Kelsey Mitchell, the veteran who has been inside this organization through its most difficult years, made the same exact choice seconds later. Mitchell's decision carries its own specific significance that gets buried when the entire conversation centers on Clark. Mitchell is not a first-year player discovering what professional basketball demands at this level. She is a player who has earned genuine institutional standing inside the Fever organization, who understands exactly what a public statement like this costs professionally, and who made the calculation that visibly aligning herself with Clark's signal was worth that cost. When a veteran of Mitchell's standing makes that choice in front of a live camera, she is not acting on impulse or emotion. She is making a deliberate decision about which side of a serious internal conflict she is standing on, and the answer was Clark's side, unambiguously. On camera, with the full awareness that everyone watching would understand precisely what she was communicating. Now, the framing that circulated fastest across social media, the one that positioned Stephanie White as simply a bad coach who earned a public humiliation, is too convenient. It captures the emotional energy of the moment and misses the analytical depth that the situation actually requires. White is an experienced coach with a legitimate record in basketball. She is operating inside a set of circumstances that has no real precedent in the history of women's professional sport, managing the most scrutinized roster in the league's history, making decisions that get examined by millions of people whose primary investment is in one specific player rather than in the broader success of the team. That context does not excuse whatever has been taking place behind closed doors, but it is necessary for understanding how this situation arrived at the point it arrived at. The specific failure that sources describe as the accelerant behind what Clark and Mitchell communicated on that court is not dramatic in the way that immediate coverage has framed it. It is actually quite mundane, which is precisely what makes it so corrosive over time. It is a communication pattern, specifically the way accountability gets framed in the immediate aftermath of losses. Professional athletes at this level have a finely calibrated sensitivity to fairness that develops over years of competing inside high-stakes environments. They can handle criticism. They can absorb blame when it lands on them directly and with honesty. What they historically cannot absorb, what has dismantled more locker rooms more quickly than any other single factor in professional sports, is the sense that the person accountable for the team's strategy is protecting their own record at the player's expense in the narratives that follow losses. When a team loses and post-game framing consistently identifies what the players failed to execute without equally examining what the game plan failed to anticipate, the players notice. They always notice, and they keep track. And the ledger of those moments accumulates silently until someone decides, consciously or not, that the professional cost of sending a public message is lower than the personal cost of continuing to carry the weight of a dynamic that is not functioning. That is what 15 seconds of post-game footage looked like. The fan response confirmed everything. The reaction across every platform was not primarily analytical. It was immediate recognition. The millions of viewers who discovered the WNBA for the first time through Caitlin Clark came specifically to watch one player operate at her level. They stayed because the competition is genuine and the stakes are real. But they are not disengaged observers. They have a personal investment in Clark that runs deeper than casual sports fandom. And when they watched the footage of that post-game moment, what they experienced was not just surprise at a viral incident. It was a specific kind of concern that comes from watching the person you showed up for demonstrate publicly that the organization around her is not what it needs to be. The financial stakes attached to that concern are not hypothetical. The WNBA's commercial transformation over the past 2 years has been driven by an audience that did not meaningfully exist before Clark arrived. The casual fans, the millions who bought merchandise and pushed viewership numbers and filled seats in arenas that had been operating well below capacity for years, did not come because of the league's institutional history. They came because of one player. And if that player's relationship with her franchise deteriorates visibly and in public, that audience will not quietly redirect its investment toward the broader product. It will disengage. And the financial reversal of that disengagement will move as quickly as the financial gains did, probably faster. The audience that found the WNBA through Caitlin Clark has always had options. The league earned their attention through her presence. It keeps that attention only by demonstrating that it recognizes what it has. The historical comparison that keeps appearing in serious examinations of this situation is not being surfaced for rhetorical effect. It is the most structurally accurate parallel available for what is happening right now. The NBA in the 1980s had a player whose economic and cultural impact on the league was transformational in a way that had not been seen before. The league faced a choice about how seriously it would protect that player's ability to perform at the level that was making the entire product commercially viable. The teams that built their entire approach around physically limiting that player, rather than genuinely competing with him, believed they were making a smart strategic calculation. They believed aggressive physicality was simply professional basketball played at its highest level. They were wrong. Not about the rules, about the product. Fans were not paying to watch Michael Jordan get physically targeted. They were paying to watch Michael Jordan play basketball. When those two things came into conflict, the resolution was never complicated. The product is the greatness. Anything that suppresses the greatness suppresses the product. The parallel to Clark and the Fever runs directly. Fans did not invest in the Indiana Fever to watch Caitlin Clark navigate a dysfunctional internal environment, absorb disproportionate blame for team losses, and have her relationship with her coaching staff deteriorate in front of a live broadcast. They invested to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball at the level she is capable of playing it. The organization that has her is holding the greatest commercial asset in the history of the sport. The question that those 15 seconds have now forced into public view is whether the people running that organization understand what they have and are capable of building around it with the seriousness that requires, or whether they will be remembered as the front office that had everything and watched it walk past them without looking back. So where does this actually go from here? Because this story does not conclude with a viral clip and a social media news cycle. It concludes with decisions. Specific, consequential organizational decisions that the Indiana Fever need to make more quickly than they have probably ever had to make anything. The first decision is about public communication. Stephanie White needs to address what happened, and it needs to be genuine rather than managed. A carefully drafted statement from a communications team will not function in this environment. The audience watching this situation has seen that playbook too many times. What this moment demands is a direct acknowledgement that the relationship with her players has reached a breaking point and a concrete indication of what structural or philosophical changes are being considered. Silence will be read universally as confirmation that the relationship is already beyond repair. The footage is too prominent and the fan investment is too high for institutional quiet to function as damage control here. The second decision is internal and arguably more consequential than anything said publicly. Clark and Mitchell delivered a message on that court. Someone with genuine authority inside the organization needs to receive that message seriously. Not as a discipline matter, not as a narrative to be managed from the outside, as information, as a real signal from the two most important players on the roster about the state of the environment they are operating inside. The front office needs to sit with both players, ask honest questions about what drove those specific choices, and actually listen to the answers without institutional defensiveness operating as the primary filter. The third decision belongs to the front office's capacity for honest self-examination. Head coaches do not lose the public trust of their two franchise players without a broader organizational culture contributing to that outcome. The internal structures through which accountability gets communicated, the degree to which the organization has genuinely built institutional support around its most valuable player, the decisions that have shaped the team's internal environment through this season, all of it requires honest assessment from the people who built it. The leadership of this franchise needs to ask the question that is uncomfortable in exact proportion to how necessary it is. What did we create here, and what needs to be rebuilt from the ground up? Because right now the character of the Indiana Fever is being revealed. Not in the easy moments when the arena is full and the viewership numbers are breaking records and everything the franchise was supposed to become feels within reach. In this moment. In the aftermath of a public breakdown that nobody inside that building wanted to be managing. Toughness is visible in losses. Competitive spirit is visible in how a team responds when nothing is working. But flexibility, the genuine willingness to change what is clearly broken regardless of what it costs organizationally to acknowledge it, that is the quality that is still completely undetermined. Because here is the only question that actually matters as this develops. Is the relationship between Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Stephanie White at a point where it can genuinely be reconstructed? Or did those 15 seconds on camera represent something that has already passed the threshold where repair is possible? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Do you think Stephanie White is still the Fever's head coach when this season ends? Do you think the relationship with Clark can be rebuilt, or has it crossed a line that does not uncross? And what do you think the organization has to do in the next 72 hours to prevent this from becoming the moment the Caitlin Clark era in Indiana ended before it had a real chance to begin? Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is not the conclusion of the story. This is the moment right before everything in Indiana either gets put back together or falls apart completely. And you want to be here for every single development as it happens.